So we're going to call the, is there any? We're going to call the meeting to order.
Nice classic.
7:35. We have a public hearing. In case you didn't know, you're the public. Woodbridge Gas LLC and KFP Family Limited Partnerships application for amendment of section 3.14.1 gasoline stations. Applications to amend section 3.14.1 of the zoning regulations of the town of Woodbridge by removing the limitation on the gross floor area of a building that can use to sell convenience items. As a side, if anybody on the commission's had any conversations with the applicants or anything to do with this application, you probably should recuse yourself.
For the record, my name is John Paul Garcia. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor, licensed in the practice state of Connecticut, 190 Fairwood Road, town of Bethany. I'm here representing Woodbridge Gas LLC, and I don't see anybody on this commission that I have discussed this with. So,
Well,
I understand
my
that,
job
but
is just to make a point.
And I understand
actually,
that, and I just want to...
I appreciate that, but that wasn't necessary.
Okay, well, okay. The application before you is to amend the zoning regulations. Right now you have a prohibition on more than 30% of your gas station being used for a convenience store. And the regulations don't reflect the current state of gas station / convenience store design. When these were written, it was quite common for a gas station to have service bays. And that, I think, has gone the way of some other things in this type of an environment, and that there's no longer a use or a need for that kind of an operation. What you now have is a gas station that is also a convenience store, very similar to the old mom and pops. This is the only town that I know of in the area, and that means Seymour, Hamden, North Haven, Bethany, that has a prohibition on this kind of an operation. 90% of the gas stations that you now, or they're not even called filling, they're filling stations if you talk to people in the business. 90% of the filling stations are convenience store / filling stations. When the operation was first proposed to this commission, in order for us to get the approval, and this is for, it's not site specific, but what brought this about is what we had to go through to get 1655 Litchfield Turnpike approved. We have a separate gas kiosk. In other words, there's an attendant that sits outside on the island and takes money. That's the way it works. And we would like to revise that so that it's now a standard convenience store / gas station setup that everybody in this room has been to. And as I said when we started this, and it's pretty well pointed out in the accompanying paperwork that was submitted with the application, this is the way that these things are now run. The day of seeing a two-bay garage in a gas station, I think, are long gone. In Bethany, the last one went out was Paul Hubbard when he finally got rid of Pleasant View and opened his own service bays with no gas. They don't want to, the mechanics just don't want to deal with the constant going in and out or constant fooling around with the public and the pumps. Whereas a convenience store, it's geared up for that. They have an attendant, they can watch the pumps, and so that's the new dynamic for all these. And like I said, this is the only town I've ever I've done one of these. We just finished the one in Bethany up on top of the hill, and that just opened a couple of weeks ago, and we've got a couple of more under work. And this is I think this is the only town I've ever worked in that has a prohibition on those. And so I think the regulations should be upgraded to reflect the current dynamic of the gas station / convenience store business. This is what the people want. They want to be able to stop, get gas, run in and get a gallon of milk or something without having to go to a Stop and Shop. And so that's the purpose for asking for this, and that's why we're here. You have the accompanying documentation, and I think that's basically it. I don't think there's any much.
So there is a gas station and there is a store there with as you call it, convenience items. I'm not going to buy into, by the way, that, I mean, maybe it's the only places there are other towns that I'm sure have this, but regardless, there's still a gas station there to get gas, and there's still a store there, and you can still get your gas, and you can still.
But we can't have the attendant in the store. The attendant has to be in the kiosk, and that's not the way these things are run. I mean, if we have to, we run it that way. But it's forcing a dynamic that is not normal. I mean, no, you shake your head, Mr. Chairman, but it's not. And I seriously mean this. I think you have to go far and wide to find anybody else's regulation that prohibits a gas station / convenience store.
Okay,
It's just, 40 years ago, yeah, it was okay, but that's not the dynamic today. That's not the building model today.
well,
And it doesn't serve a valid public use.
well, I guess that's probably that's up for interpretation. But fact of the matter is, to me, you could still go there if the guy is. First of all, 90% of the people probably use credit cards, so they don't even go. They don't have to go to a store or go see a guy anyway, because they just put their credit card in the pump, and if they want something, they go in and get it. Just because they're paying the guy on the island doesn't mean they're not going to go in and get their milk. Okay, that's my feeling. The other thing is, I'm not going to tell you that our regs aren't dated, because most of our regulations are dated. But the fact of the matter is, we did make a point of, one of the reasons we turned this down last time is because we don't want to approve it, because we don't want convenience stores all over town. And so that's a dilemma. And so I agree that if the regulation was what you wanted, and we actually had reviewed it, if we reviewed it and changed it, then we could obviously control where these businesses can be. But that's a false statement also, because we're talking a gas station / convenience store. There aren't a number of places that these things can be all over town. It's a very difficult operation to open. Getting DOT approval, I'll be perfectly upfront. I think we were approved by this board 7 months ago, and I literally just got DOT approval about 3 weeks ago, and our traffic consultant is in the process of getting signalization ironed out. So that's not a true statement. Getting these things approved, getting the curb cuts, getting the traffic patterns down is a very difficult operation, and there are not a lot of sites that have the size required to permit the use. I mean, one of the things you have to have is you have to have sufficient stacking, you have to have off-street loading. There aren't a lot of sites that lend themselves to that, especially on a state right-of-way. The signalization becomes, if there's any kind of a signal near it, if there's any kind of a traffic turning issue. I'll bet you Mike's muffler probably can do it. I'll bet you the Sunoco station can do it if it's still.
But that's assuming that they want to change the use.
But the point, I mean, to me, the point is, we don't want a lot of places to put convenience stores in town. So yes, obviously, anybody can say yes or no. I mean, that's the way it works.
Okay. Well, like I said, it's not the business model that is normally done. I understand. I understand that there seems to be an inherent. I don't know what the proper word would be, but there seems to be a convenience store prohibition, or an attempt to curb their use.
I think then too, I mean, putting words into my mouth, because I'm the only one that's speaking up here, so I kind of have a problem with that. But
I apologize.
What we are trying to do is increase our economic development, and we're trying to bring businesses in. And I don't think the best thing that businesses want to be next to all the time is a gas station and a convenience store. Maybe that doesn't bother you. Most towns actually have areas where they put these things, and areas where they don't put it. You can go to Fairfield, they have it. They have it at the extreme ends of town,
Yep.
on the way out, on the way in, but they don't actually let you do it in the middle of the town.
Correct.
So my point is, somebody has spent the time to figure this out, because they've also determined the same thing that I just said. I didn't just reinvent the wheel here. Okay, You don't want these kind of businesses everywhere. You want to attract good businesses. That's what we're trying to do. Increase our economic base by bringing in good businesses that are good for Woodbridge.
And a gas station, you have no, to my knowledge, there is no gas station in Woodbridge.
You're putting in a gas station.
But we're putting in a.
And there's Stop and Shop. There's gas
but it's two different, Stop and Shop and Woodbridge are two different, are two different models. Two different
again,
scales.
it's really.
Okay, I think you're right.
Let's not sidetrack because it doesn't really matter how many gas stations there are.
Yeah.
It's the question of, it's a convenience store question.
Yeah, and the question is to put the gas, by prohibiting that, you force him to have an exterior attendant. You force him to have the gas kiosk. And I'm saying that that's not a normal business model. That's all. And I think we're beating a dead horse, I think, to go any farther.
So let's see if somebody else
paperwork.
got any questions.
Can you explain, oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, from our approval, we had two separate approvals, right? We had a
Yes.
convenience and we had a gas station. They were gonna be
Yeah.
totally separate. Now you're looking to combine them. What are your plans for the existing building there?
Just to renovate it in place.
So you're not looking to expand what's there?
No.
But
No,
they
he's
can
not.
if they want.
They can if they
Him
want.
saying
Right now,
that, with all due respect, him saying that doesn't mean they're not doing it. They can't do it.
Right, I'm just asking
I have
what
no-
the plans are.
here's the plan that was just approved by DOT.
Except, correct me, what we're asking for here is a
It's
zoning
secondary.
amendment.
It's totally secondary.
A zoning amendment, which is not just limited to this one site, it's for the entire town.
Right.
And so therefore, any place that you could possibly put in a gas station, this would affect it.
That's, if you can put in a gas station / convenience store,
Yeah,
not a,
I agree.
that, and that's what I'm saying, is that is indeed correct. But understand that while that sounds easy to do in theory, in actual fact, it's a very difficult process because you have other issues, not just the gas station. You asked the question about, can you expand the building? The answer is probably yes, but I would probably have to go through some extremely serious gyrations to be able to get traffic flow to work on there where DOT would follow and allow a sign off. It's a very difficult site because of the proximity to the intersection with the on-ramps for 59 and 69, going by the front of it. It's a great location for it, don't get me wrong, but the same problem that we had with the Starbucks we had with this one is interior stacking of vehicles. The first words out of Ernie's mouth, the DOT permitter, was, you make sure that damn fuel truck has enough room to get off of 69. Because when the other one was there, they were constantly backing into 69 and shutting it down. That was the first words out of his mouth. Getting a fuel truck to move around that site is somewhat of an art form. So to make the building bigger is going to cause traffic problems that I don't think are easily surmountable. I don't want to do it again. I'm tired of it. Yes, sir.
So can we go back to what was just your question? So if you're looking to have this applied to the entire town, you've heard some concerns expressed. So what other alternatives have you thought of that would be site-specific? In other words, you have approvals from this commission as to utilizing the gas station. You have the significance of the convenience store, and you have our regs that tend to get in the way of what you'd like to do. But it seems to me that there may be a way to be site-specific rather than generally allowed in the town. And I think you're hearing that concern. So I'm wondering if going back to the drawing board to try to come up with something that might be site-specific would be useful in consultation with our zoning enforcement officer.
Well,
I just offer that.
It's possible. I'm pretty sure it's possible. But what I didn't want to get into is spot zoning or into something that would be close to that.
Well, I don't think that our approvals as to what we've given you would with a proper modification, be spot zone. Okay, I mean, that's an
Okay.
offhand comment. So I just wonder, again, this is the public hearing, and we've got a discussion piece after
Yeah.
this, but since you're here, I'm just wondering whether or not looking at it in a different context might be more useful, so that we don't have these issues that have been raised by the chairman and by the vice chairman.
Sure, that's something that's probably relatively, if I can get with Terry for a couple of minutes, probably something we can hash out. And
But,
Terry's a
just
smart
to
guy.
add just to add to what Alan's saying, because this is actually one of the things I was thinking as well, so I agree with that. But let's think about what we have and what you're asking for, okay? Because although he's not asking for a site visit, you also just change our regs. Because right now you can do everything you want to do, and you're getting a gas station and you're getting a store and that sells convenience because it's retail as opposed to a convenience store. So we've already approved all that, which is great. So really what you're asking for is to instead of having two people working in the store, you have one person working outside and one person working in the store. So it's really a should I go so far as to say, although you would, it's an economic reason it's a financial reason for the business that you don't want to pay for this person to be standing in the booth.
There's also a safety reason. After there's a life safety issue here. By 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you want to have your operation not shut down per se, but controlled. And so having a separate booth, having a separate convenience store, it's another exposure that maybe you don't want.
But having said that, that is the norm actually all over the state.
It's not.
Excuse me. You go down to any of the rest areas on 95. That's exactly what they are. They got the guy outside in the booth, and you can go in and get your food.
And that's a different ball game because you're running 12 pumps. They need a.
I'm just
it's
saying.
a scale.
I'm just saying. You said it isn't the norm, and I'm telling you it's pretty normal in this state.
Again, it's a design parameter under a certain set of conditions. This isn't the same set of conditions. The rest stop is not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about 12, 15, 20 pumps.
Well, you're here. Maybe we're beating a dead horse, so maybe I'll stop. But you're here because you don't want to put a person in the booth.
No.
You want the money, the cash money taken from the store. Okay, that's what we're here for. So you want us to change our regs so that you can be allowed to do that. And I'm just saying that the scenario that you have set up right now, which is perfect, approved, it's legal, DOT signed off, and is perfectly acceptable. You don't want to do it that way.
And again, I think you're simplifying it the wrong way.
I'm trying.
Again, there's other issues here, and one of them is design, and one of them is a safety issue. It's money, yes. It always boils down to the money, but it also boils down to an operation that functions the way it should function, and a safety issue. But again, Al had an excellent. If we want to table this for 30 days and modify it, we can do that too.
I would.
I think the use
I would be in
of that
favor of that. I mean, it's
conversation-
kind of like a conversation that I was having with Christine this afternoon. I think I would be in favor of that. Assuming everyone agrees with that.
I agree, making it more site-specific as opposed to the whole town. At least that's...
Okay. Then if it meets the approval of the commission, then I would like to ask for a 30-day or 35-day extension to allow me to get with.
Well, let's shoot for that. Shoot for the next meeting.
Yeah, whatever
Yeah.
time you need next week.
Obviously, we don't want to
to
jam
get
you up.
with Mr. Gilbertson to.
But as it stands right now, you guys can still move forward, and because nothing's going to really change here.
Oh, we are moving forward.
Yeah,
Like I said, we're in the
yeah.
process of hashing out the signalization, and I don't know if you guys know that they're doing a whole new survey, and they're going to completely redo the signalization, and they're going to completely redo the ramps and all kinds of fun stuff down at And I don't think my granddaughter is only 2, and I think she'll be driving before they fix it.
Exactly. Don't hold your breath.
Don't hold your breath.
We're hoping. So, what is your, as a side, what is your timeline on this project?
I haven't talked to Mo in a while about the exact timeline, but I know he's getting anxious to start.
Cool. Well, we are too. Okay, cool. So, unless, I mean,
Do you need a piece of paper, or just that's?
No, as long as you've given.
We're on
us
TV,
permission
man.
to Table it until the next meeting, we're delighted
Okay.
to do that.
Thank you.
By consensus.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're the man.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next, receipt and appropriate action for applications and 824 referrals received since the March 2nd, 2015 meeting of the commission. The Tradition Golf Club at Oakland, I guess that's what it's called. Application for a special permit to replace the freestanding sign for use by the Tradition Golf Club at Oakland. We have to set that up for a, so we should just assume we can do that next month.
Next month?
Okay. Woodbridge, 180 Amity Road LLC, doing business as Wheeler's Restaurant and Tap Room, 180 Amity Road. Application to amend the business hours for the current special exception permit for a restaurant and liquor establishment for Wheeler's Restaurant and Tap Room. Does this also need a public hearing? Why is that? I mean, because this is kind of like this is one of those things that gets into, we just make people do hurdles. I mean,
We've been.
I don't want to get in trouble, so.
We've been living with this regulation for some time. We are still living with this regulation.
Yeah.
So even though it's just an amendment or it's a
Hours.
change of an existing approval?
How many times have you actually seen this sort of thing?
Yeah,
Many
it's-
times. That's why you're frustrated with it.
So, having said all that, so obviously we'll set up for next month, but,
Great.
going back, I mean, I will tell you for the commission, when people come to here, I always am amazed, from all of us, that we keep asking them all these questions, what time you're gonna open, what time you're gonna close. I think they're businesses, I think it's okay. They're only gonna be open when they're making money. And I think that it's okay not to, where we keep putting these, I think we put too strict requirements on some of these businesses, and I kind of remember this one and couldn't understand why it was acceptable to them. So I'm just saying, I mean, I suppose we should change the regulation, but by the same token, I also think that we shouldn't probably be so hard-lined on, well, after 10 o'clock or something, whatever the hours
Actually, if
is.
I remember, this is what they requested.
Because I think they are led to believe that
Oh,
that's
okay.
what gets them through the meeting.
Because I think we just requested that they,
I get it, don't get me wrong, but.
In conversations with staff, we encourage applicants to imagine themselves successful
Yeah,
and to put on that Schedule A what they will look like when they're successful.
Yeah.
And not to do exactly what you suggested, is to give themselves something that they think would be approved, more approvable, just to give them another task to do 2 or 3 years down the line.
I'm probably reading into it more than I should, so I apologize. I don't really mean to do it that way, but I agree with what you just said. But I don't know what they are risking. They're opening a restaurant and a bar. Why would you limit yourself? What difference does it make? If you're opening up and you only want to be open until 10 o'clock, then great. But 99% of the bars, restaurants out there have till X hours. And so why not just do it and then close at 10 anyway?
Right, it's usually the liquor permit that sets your hours of
that's
operation.
the one that drives it.
Right.
So I wonder if, Terry, you might have a suggestion about an appropriate amendment, which gives you as a CEO some oversight, if in fact, there's been an approval in which they're looking to amend so that they can get a longer time period. Maybe we don't need a public hearing issue, and maybe we can just have it as an item on the agenda with a report from the zoning enforcement officer as to what it is they're looking to do, and so we don't have to make it overly long. And, if we're trying to be business friendly, and we're trying to still protect the interests of the town,
Right.
that might work.
Right. I mean, it's one thing if it's a business that's new coming into town, that's one thing, we can put a lot of restrictions on. I think that's okay. That's what every town does.
I think it also depends on what the business is and where it's located because of the neighbors. Neighbors may have concerns.
Well, that's why we have districts, but this is clearly not, I mean, there's no restaurants and bars in neighborhoods.
They're right behind it. I mean, there's the whole Selden Street neighborhood, which is right behind it.
It's mostly commercial, there's a few houses.
Right, there are
But the fact of the matter, it's a
That's
business,
why
and
I'm
we're
bringing it up.
approving a business, and I don't think our job is to trip people up.
The major thing is, does it really need a public hearing?
That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, as
But I
opposed
do
to...
think some oversight.
Oh,
limited ways
I
of
have no
Well, I think
problems,
I think it
I have no
need-
problems having them come back and
I
ask for our
I think it's
approval.
okay to come back
But
here. But
not-
the fact that we have to say, okay, now you have to wait another month.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's not
That-
business friendly, and
that's-
it's not, I think, what we're set up to do. I think we have a protection of the public requirement, as was just suggested by Peggy, and I think you can do that in a more limited way.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So you're looking for suggestions to retain oversight.
Yes.
Well, I think that if there's a way to.
Because
get
we
it
did- we
so that
earlier
if you wanna
talked about no
change
oversight.
hours, something like changing hours, is there some way, I don't want to put words in Alan's mouth, but I mean, I think what he's saying is depending on the level of complexity of the change, does it, I mean, it's one thing to come before the commission, but is there a way to get it so that, okay, up to a level 5, you can do it through the commission, and 5
Many
to 10,
communities do
you
it
can go
through
a public
a
hearing.
staff.
Correct. And I just think that maybe it's a protection ultimately if you could just put it on the next agenda so that we could know it, you can give us a recommendation, reasons why, and if we thought
then the commission
that a
can make a
public hearing was
recommendation.
So there are
necessary.
a lot of things we don't
Right,
need
then,
public hearings on, that
we
we
have-
approve.
So I don't want to throw that out
Well-
because I think Peggy's correct that if in fact we looked at it and we realized it was backing up to the neighborhood.
We will make some
Might want to-
recommendations to you at the next meeting.
Okay, cool. Thanks, I didn't mean to sidetrack too much there. So we're going into our work session, and we're gonna skip number 1.
That's over to 6-1, right? I mean, as a matter of course.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what?
It's over to 6-1 as a matter of our agenda scheduling,
Yeah.
whether we act on it or not.
The next item on the work session is Robert Leonard, 175 Annual application for amendment of section 13.12.1 liquor establishments, application to amend 3.12.1 of the zoning regulations of the town of Woodbridge to add a new subsection reading. We're in a work session here. Manufacturer of beer and brew pub.
Is there a public hearing on this?
There is 6-1.
Hmm?
Yeah, but we haven't had it
6-1,
yet.
but we have,
That's right, if we haven't had it,
Yeah, we can't,
Yeah,
can't be
so
the
why-
work session.
Yeah, I didn't
Why it's
understand.
actually- I
That's
know,
what I'm
that's
trying to get.
figure out. Well, I was waiting till I got to the end. But I agree, I'm not sure
It
why
has
it's
to be
listed in the
scheduled-
work, I'm not sure why it's listed in the work
it
session.
has to be scheduled for a public hearing.
I just read what they.
Same with 3 and 4.
correct.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. All right, well, one of my favorite things about Passover is skipping pages, and so now we're just going to go to page 5. Which is a Woodbridge Village Association LLC discussion with the commission regarding the Woodbridge Village project, contemplate amendment to the Woodbridge zoning regulations.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Duff. You know that I'm an attorney. I represent Woodbridge Village Associates, and my client, Steve Wise, is with me this evening. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again this evening. You know, we've had tonight specifically in regard to some proposed regulation amendments to the AAPD regs that I think were first approved in 2005 or 2006. We've had a number of these informal discussions with the commission, and we appreciate the time that you've devoted to these in each case. But we really do believe, and we hope, that this is the last of the informal meetings, such that it can become the precursor to an actual submission of applications, such that we can achieve what I think the collective we all want, both the town, this commission, and my client, which is the fruition of our development with some changes, but in a way that acknowledges and is consistent with your new plan of conservation development, acknowledges the challenges that we face in terms of developing this project under the current zoning rubric, acknowledge that this project does not exist in a vacuum and that it has to reflect what is currently going on in the market as well as other developments in both the town of Woodbridge and the area, but also acknowledges the opportunities that both we and the town should be taking advantage of. So, you may know that our project first came to conception shortly after your adoption of the 2003 Plan of Conservation Developments.
5.
In that plan,
That 2005?
well, it was
The Plan of Conservation Development was 2005.
I thought your current one referenced 2003, but it was quite a while ago. We'll
No,
agree
and
upon
I
that.
agree, and I concur to that completely. I mean, I don't want to mess things up here.
And it was that plan that suggested the creation of a village district,
Right.
and that was a designation, and I've said this many times, sitting in this chair, that we did not oppose. In fact, we embraced it, and I would argue that we enhanced it through our very rigorous architectural regulations. So I think it's fitting. It's sort of a nice bookend that I think your new plan of conservation development is going to be the stepping stone to actually make the project come to fruition. So I have sort of just a short bullet point summary of what we want to change, what we don't want to change, and then I'll go into some reasons as to why that is.
Thank you.
So let's start with what isn't changing, what we don't propose to change. We do not propose to change the same high architectural and site design standards that we enacted back in 2005, 2006. We propose not to change the requirement for the town green and commercial retail space. We do not propose to change the density of 10 units per acre. We do not propose to change the maximum building coverage of 30%. So in short, what you see and what you'll experience as you visit the site will be largely unchanged if our proposed zoning regulations are approved. But let's discuss what we do want to change, and two of these in particular are quite important, particularly the first. Most fundamentally, we propose to eliminate the requirement that residents be 55 years old or older. Not only is this the largest impediment to getting a project underway, but also excludes precisely those populations of the town and the village district should be embracing to create a vibrant community, particularly younger singles and couples. We've learned that the approved plan is simply not marketable solely to the over 55 population. You'll recall that some time ago that we and a representative Toll Brothers met with you, and Toll recommended some substantial changes to our approved plan to make the project more marketable to seniors. And frankly, this commission did not embrace those changes, I think because you preferred the look and design of the original approved plan. So we dropped that idea, but we've seen Toll's suggestions resurface in the proposal for the country club. And what they propose is quite different from our approved projects, demonstrating that our design is one that's not favored by the demographic that is initially targeted, the over 55 demographic. And let's be candid. If Toll and the town of Woodbridge go forward on the proposal, that will be a direct competitor to us that's going to be better positioned, better designed to target that market. But whether or not the Toll proposal goes forward, we have concluded that our current approved plan is not one which we can target solely to those 55 and older. Nevertheless, multifamily residential is usually inhabited or tenanted by what's called families in transition. And so certainly some of those families in transition will include people over the age of 55, whether it's people who are downsizing, empty nesters, those who are widowed, those who are divorced. There's going to be a number of folks, 55 and older, that will live in this development, but we just can't exclude, we can't limit it to only those 55 and older. At the same time as we provide a alternative housing arrangement for those people, we're also providing opportunities for those families in transition at the other end of the age spectrum. You know, those young couples and young singles who, you know, may be working in New Haven and just want, you know, a little more elbow room. You know, there's a really, frankly, amazing development. And just one example in New Haven called Alexion. They're moving their headquarters from Cheshire to across the street from the Yale Medical School. Take a look at their website. They have dozens and dozens and dozens of job openings. In fact, my daughter does pharmaceutical consulting. She said this is a company that's just taking off because they're doing some really innovative things. So those people with bachelor's degrees, master's, PhDs, MDs are going to need to live in this area. And while some will certainly choose to live in high rises in New Haven, there's going to be some who just want a little more space. And those are the folks that you should be clamoring for, that can shop in the stores that your plan and conservation development envision, that can go to the restaurants, can, you know, and bring some vitality to this area. So in addition to the seniors who choose not to live in this enclave of seniors, but choose to live in a more vibrant community with people who are in their 20s, their 30s, you know, those couples just starting out, that makes for a really interesting mix of people for this project. The second proposal in terms of the reg change is to clarify that the south side of the project not be built before the north. And I say clarify because the current regulation is not explicit. What it says is that any individual portion of the development.
Regulation of the approval.
Was that?
The regulation of the approval.
The regulation itself. The regulation itself says that any portion of the development must be capable of meeting all the requirements on its own. And so what the purpose of that was, at the time we drafted it, was that for the town to ensure that the green and the commercial space was built. Well, it may be that when we get our approvals, assuming that's the case, that it makes more sense to build the north side before the south side. And so that's the only thing we want, is the flexibility to build one side before the other, and with the understanding that the town green and the commercial space would always be built. The third change, and this is a fairly minor one, is to modify the required square footage of the buildings, of the units in the flats, and those are the ones on the south side, from a minimum of 1,000 square feet to 700 square feet. And in the two-story units, where the requirement that the first floor be 1,000 square feet, modify that as well to 700 square feet. And then the last.
Quick clarification.
Sure.
So the units now are designed at 1,000 square feet, and you want to put the requirement at 700 square feet?
Right. I mean, so what the current regulations say is that any unit on the south side, which is the multi-story residential above commercial, each of those units has to be 1,000 square feet at minimum. We are proposing to modify the regulation to say that those units have to be a minimum of 700 square feet. Likewise, on the north side, which are the townhome units, the current regulation says that the first floor of those units has to be 1,000 square feet, and we're proposing that it be modified to 700 square feet. Not in total, but just the first floor. And really, this is just to provide us with increased flexibility in terms of the design of the project and targeting or better matching the income levels and the demographic for the project. And then the last one is a proposal to allow the breaking up of the development into separate parcels. Not that anything would be seen. It would always be under the umbrella of Woodbridge Village, but it simply would allow us to finance buildings separately, to get investors to finance those separately. It would be impossible to tell from anyone walking by as to, is this Unit A, Unit B, Unit C, are they all one unit, are they separate units? All it does is it allows us to more creatively finance a project and get it out of the ground. So those are the 4 primary requests that we have in terms of the zone change. And as I noted, certainly we have challenges and we have obstacles, and we're asking for your help, but it's not just your help that we're asking for, because, as I noted, these changes will also help to bring to fruition your vision that's outlined in the POCD. You know, I went through with great care. Every one of these tabs is a page on which there is language in your plan that supports not only this development, but more specifically, these proposed changes. And so some of them are, you note that there's a below average portion of the town between the ages of 20 and 44, that housing prices are the highest in the region. Housing prices as a percentage of salary are too high. You acknowledge that you need space conducive to seniors so they can age in place. The plan recommends the increase of the supply and values of housing in the Village District, expand Woodbridge's menu of housing options, develop a supply of over 55 housing options. This would certainly be an option. It wouldn't be required that it be 55 and older, but certainly an alternative for that age group. It calls for improved pedestrian connections, standards for sidewalks and lighting, which we already have, and densification of key sites such as ours, including housing over commercial. It suggests understanding the town's role within the larger regional economy, which goes back to the New Haven and Alexian comment. It notes that the village area is best suited for more multifamily development. It notes that the traffic volumes are down on Route 69. There's, I think, pages 52 through 58 all talk about the reduction in traffic. The Woodbridge Village Action Plan, ongoing design priorities lists our property as an ongoing design priority. And there's also a provision that suggests strengthening the village district standards to be more in keeping, frankly, to be more in keeping with our regulations. When we enacted our regs, and then the town, or this commission, went back and decided, well, we need now to enact regulations that will govern the rest or the balance of the village district. Frankly, you scaled back what we required of ourselves. So I think what the plan is saying is go back to the Woodbridge Village standards in terms of the higher standards in terms of site design and amenities. And even the section that talks about future zoning, which is the village mixed use zone, we're consistent with that as well. So as a note, there's no question that we need some relief from the existing set of regulations, but just as importantly, that relief is consistent with your plan. And I think this is sort of as I noted, the platform from which we can all move forward. I think my client has been very, very patient. I think the town and this commission has been very patient, but I think the time for patience is over. I think we need to move forward. I think we can do that together. And we would hope that we can start the application process after getting some feedback from you tonight.
I have a couple of questions based on what you just said. One's pretty general, one's very specific. I'll start out with the specific one first. Why 700, not 800, 600? Where does that number come from? Is that relative to, say, looking at what's happening in New Haven or other surrounding towns? Just trying to get a feel. Is that based upon what you figure is going to be the minimum necessary space for a single who's basically unattached to be able to live in sort of a, semi, bedroom, bath, kitchen type of, I'm just curious as to where that comes from.
Frankly, is based upon my client's experience of building other multifamily residential, and just allows us to create, a project with more flexibility in terms of number of units and, building space that many people don't require.
So can you share with us, if you might, other projects that actually meet those criteria?
For the record, Steve Wise with Woodbridge Village Associates.
You just sign in.
I think we're going to have you sign in first before you can talk.
Okay. The answer is a pretty simple question, a simple answer, and the question relates to our desire to appeal to a broad mix of units, and one bedrooms will, in today's market, across the board, hover around a 700 square foot per unit allocation. It's really that simple. Yeah.
And I have another general question. Obviously, just got through the campaign here, and there were lots of issues that came up in the campaign, but one of the things we've all dealt with, and some of us haven't been on this board as long as others have, and certainly I wasn't on it when we had the earlier POCD, whichever the year is, 2005 or 2003, but the question became, that was a designated area for elderly housing. And so I would pose the question this way. If in fact you could exclude whatever Toll Brothers has talked about or wants to do, et cetera, okay, and you realize you're trying to broaden your appeal, I guess for our purposes, since this was a designated area, and we've heard it in lots of different ways from lots of different people, that's where you're supposed to put the elderly. Maybe you can share with us a little more specifics on why that's not the area from a good business perspective in which you can put the elderly. And elderly means over 55, which isn't that elderly as I gather for most people.
Not anymore.
Listen, it's been a while since I've taken a look at the 2005 or 2003 plan of development.
It's 05.
Okay, but I don't specifically remember that this area was designated for 55 and older. But I think, regardless, as I noted, you have this area that has been designated as, I think one portion of the plan calls it, the proposed downtown area of the town. Believe me, I have as of a year and a half ago, I have a newly found affection for those 55 and older. But I don't know that that's what you want to be the core of your downtown. And I think it's interesting that even though we have to assume that the commission and my loan room and certainly Terry knew what our approved project was, the plan is absolutely silent on saying, oh, and by the way, the Woodbridge Village application or project should remain 55 and older forever, and don't ever change it because somehow that's going to add to the vibrancy that we're looking for. And I mean, frankly, with all due respect to all those of us who are 55 and older, I think those people in their 20s and 30s are much more likely to be visiting the shops and the restaurants and those places to sort of create the feel that you're looking for.
I'm fine right now. That's a sufficient answer. Thank you.
By reducing the square footage, but yet maintaining, you're saying, the maximum density of 10 units per acre, are you then planning on reducing the entire scale? Because you're going from 1,000 square feet to potentially 700 feet, but yet maintaining the density.
That's a possibility, yes.
So you're thinking of just reducing the entire, because if I remember correctly, the original proposal was something like 150 or 660 units.
Well, it's 15 acres. It's there's a density limit of 10 per acre. I think the actual number is like 147.
Yeah. But given the 1,000 square feet, going from 1,000 square feet to potentially 700 in some units, it seems as if you're contracting the size of the area.
It's definitely a possibility. It would take some of the volume and massing out, perhaps. No question about it. It's a very, very good point. But again, it comes back to, without that adjustment, it would require us to build, if we were to build a one-bedroom at 1,000 square feet, which hasn't been the market, even for condominiums, in quite some time.
And by the way, I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but as a over 55, I'm all in favor of getting rid of the requirement. So, I don't personally see it. I think it makes a much more vibrant area when you have people from all ages, as opposed to just 55 and over. So,
Would you consider, you're looking for relief on the 55 and older restriction, would you consider a relief on X amount of units? So if it's 147 units, saying, hey, we want relief for 50 units and keep 100 at age restricted, do a mix of the both.
It's nearly impossible to do that under the Fair Housing Act. We did look at that. We've had some discussions with other town officials, and it is exceedingly difficult to sort of thread that needle.
Can I ask you
But-
a different way? No, go ahead. Mr.
May I follow up?
Yeah.
I think that we may, consistent with the comment about the 1,000 feet, which is interesting because it threads through a lot of what we're thinking, we can look at the design to accommodate the needs of a broad spectrum of people. But for example, would we think that there's a great demand for 3-bedroom units, just as an example? Probably not. So, for example, in the approval, on the north side of the street, there was great volume, there was, great massing, and it really was an in-town type single-family home attached. And we might reduce that size in a manner that might reflect a market that we're targeting on the site. So I think that through
The green was on
design.
the south side, correct?
Pardon me?
The green was on the south side?
That's
Yes.
correct, yes.
So you might consider restricting it to 2-bedroom units on,
Yeah, I mean, another option is to design them in such a way that it encourages 55 and older by having their master bedroom on the first floor, so that while you're not mandating that's 55 and older, but you design it in a way that's conducive to those 55 and older, and entices those same people.
so even if you separate these in separate parcels, you're not then mixing, so if you have a 55 and older, say phase on one parcel, and then on a separate parcel, you have relief from that 55 over. Is that going to get into the fair housing issue as
You
well?
would have to create essentially two entirely different entities. One to govern the 55 and older, and one to govern the free markets section. There really couldn't be any crossover between the two. So
is that, and I think because we've sort of alerted ourselves again as a commission to what appears through our different charrettes and different responses from the public about potentially a need, it's some vitriol aside, it does appear that we're not servicing a 55 and older population in this community the way many other communities are doing it. So I guess the question best posed is, would it be possible, within the context of knowing that you've got 15 acres there, and you'd like some relief from us in terms of segregating these parcels, to maybe look at one in which we could have some more specifics as to 55 and over. I'm not telling you that has to be the ultimate result, but I think maybe it ought to be looked at, because I think the commission, could favorably review that.
Well, he's talking
But
for
we don't know
himself.
that. And I'm talking for myself. Yeah, well, they could. But the answer is, it gives us a little more room in terms of what we're doing. I mean, if you just talk about it from a different perspective under fair housing, and you talk about the units that are going to be governed by economics alone, forget age, okay? I mean, there are set-asides that are required in many of these developments. So I'm just suggesting that you look at all the plethora of opportunities over there. And if there's some way beyond the economics of design, if there's another way to do it within the context of identified parcels that might be useful and still enhance the overall utilization of the project. Because I think, as Alan was saying, and again, subject to us, I'm not so sure that that entire parcel, and looking at it as a 55 and over parcel, does make a lot of sense in light of what you've said, and I think in a lot of our experiences. But that's just one component piece.
I think there'd be a clear willingness to explore options like that. We're here to talk this through. So the answer to that question is yes, we're open to ideas. I am not part of the club yet that is 55 and older, but I'm very close.
Well, you're working.
And I'm working on it, that's correct.
Meeting's over.
I will tell you that I have trouble conceptually, and I'm not an expert in this field, but I do have trouble understanding why it's important to designate an age of 55 to a specific location in any community, particularly as we seem to find ways to grow older longer. It's just, I don't get it. I had an experience maybe 2 decades ago in my career where that came up in a project in California where that age was missed, and it was realized that far then that people who were aging and who were healthy would never want to live in that kind of a community. And I don't think the age was 55, it might have been 60 then, but it was the same concept, and I think we have to recognize that some way. 55 is just something that we hear about in the industry today, but I don't know if there's any
They
real...
do 35.
Whatever it may be.
Is that what I told you?
I heartily agree.
I think people might be concerned about the number of school children that might be coming into the system if you take off the restriction. So
Right.
Understood.
And listen, we hear that a lot of places, but I mean, there's a lot of data that shows that just the opposite would be true. The same way I said, multifamily residential is for families in transition. It's not really for families not in transition, where you have, the prototypical, 2-parent household with 3 kids. Those folks want to be someplace else. So, and listen, am I saying to you that there won't be one school-aged child in this entire development? Well, no. But I think what your plan also says is that your school-age population has been flat and in some cases decreasing. So
That's not true.
It has recently increased.
It hasn't just recently increased. Okay, so I have some questions. Number one, you keep talking about 1,000 to 700. You're only talking about on the first floor, so these are multi-floor units.
first floor on the north side, which is
Right.
the townhomes.
Right.
And then
Those
in the
are two.
Okay. On the south side.
Okay.
But
So-
excuse me, just for clarification, there are townhomes on the south side also.
But there are, yes, yes.
Thank you. Okay, I think that, there are all sorts of studies all over the place, and we can go back and forth on the 55 and over, and a 55 and over was the ideal project because people weren't 55 yet, and they thought it was old. But having said that, now there's all these studies that come out, although there are people that would still prefer to live in a 55 and over. There's still a huge number of people who are over 55 and say, listen, I don't want to live with a bunch of old people. I can go to Florida. So there's a lot of good points to not necessarily making a age-restricted ghetto. So I think that's all valid for what you're trying to do. I don't really understand the square footage sizes you're talking about. I do work on these things all the time. The project over in Orange and Fieldstone is these 55 and over units are over 2,000 square feet. So I'm a little lost in that, but to me that's a marketing thing, and that's a business thing that you guys have to make.
May I comment on that?
Sure.
The only reason for the adjustment from 1,000 downward, is so as not to have to build a one-bedroom unit, okay, for that size, which is just not in the market. You're not seeing that in anything that's being built, I believe. Okay, 1,000 square feet, unless it's a one-bedroom with a den, something like that, but not your typical conventional multifamily type one-bedroom. That's now, John brings up a good point that the footprint, okay, of a townhome is also an adjustment, and therefore it could be larger, which speaks to what you're saying. A townhome could be 2,000 feet, but it could have a 750 square feet. So we're not suggesting by any stretch that a 2,000 square foot unit, townhome, or whatever module we want to, how we want to name it, isn't appropriate for 55 and older or anyone. We're really just trying to address this minimum that we have to meet, which does not meet the market.
So, one of the reasons communities embraced 55 and over is because it does tax the school system. And as you read in the POCD, which I'm so impressed you read it, since I think most people in town have not, we have a great school system. And people want to come to Woodbridge to go to send their kids to the school system. So that is a concern. I don't know exactly what size all these units are. Obviously, I don't think anyone's bringing a kid in a one-bedroom unit. And there's actually a low percentage of kids that will actually even show up in a two-bedroom unit, but that's not to say they won't happen. I also think that when you go from an age-restricted, a retired person or couple, I think you also start dealing with a different traffic pattern that's going on. So if you have this couple who works in New Haven, they're most likely going to have two cars. And someone who's retired may not have two cars. So, and traffic is a huge problem down there. It's like one of the things that the only thing we can suggest is that it gets studied and taken care of. So it is a huge problem. So although we have this project and we've done these traffic studies, I think we're starting to look at another traffic study if suddenly we've got potential families moving. I think it's I'm just putting up a flag about that. We don't really know anything about the Toll Brothers project up there. Those
Understood.
units, by the way, are over 2,000 square feet.
Right, exactly.
But again, I really look at that as a marketing thing that you guys have to, that's your job. I mean, that's not really our job so much. And I go back to Alan's question about saying that if the units are technically going to get smaller, then you're still sticking to your 10 units per acre. So your density isn't necessarily changing.
Right.
So, I assume there's still going to be condos as opposed to rentals.
I don't think that we were descript on either way. I think their flexibility is important.
Mm-hmm. So that would be I think that would be an important bit of information for the commission to know, is how much of it is potentially rental and how much of it is the idea is it's going to be condos. I don't want to put a damper on it, I'm just saying, I think it's something to think about.
And often owner occupied versus it is owned, right?
I'm also assuming the retail still in, I mean, you haven't taken any of that out.
No.
In your minds anyway.
Correct.
That's the idea. Okay. And
Was there a minimum amount of retail, commercial space?
yeah,
Yes, 10,000 square feet.
right. Yeah, there's a set amount. So yeah, I don't think it's a I get it. I think, obviously the concern is how many kids are going to be coming into town, and how's that is going to affect the school system. I mean, it would be naive of us to think that that's not going to happen. So I think we have to take it into account. And I do think that as soon as you go to families or young couples, you're talking about more traffic and more cars and therefore more traffic. But I don't blame you for not doing the 55 and over. I mean, I think that there are people that do want to live in those places, but I don't think it's crucial. And it is kind of what we would like to do. down in that area, is create areas where people are going to walk. I'd like to think, by the way, because some of us are at that threshold, that we will still be willing to walk on the sidewalks. I'm just saying.
May I comment on a?
Sure, yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. You know, on the schools, I think that, I'm guessing that we're all hearing or have heard that there's all kinds of studies that show that the burden on the school system might not be as great in the experiences that have now been had over however many years than might have been feared. I'm not here, and I don't think John is here to tell you anything other than it's probably time to revisit that, which you may or may not be doing, but we are hearing that across the board. We are seeing what's happening in communities that we've built. And I don't want to give you empiric this or empiric that. I just think it's something to look at because it may not be what was originally feared. Doesn't mean it couldn't change.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that's worth reviewing. Secondly, in regard to the comment about toll, I just want to be clear that what we've always been concerned about is not the developer, not necessarily the project, but as a 55 and older community, even though there can be all kinds of types of 55 and older product, that the minute that they're introduced to a finite population, there could be effects that may not be intended on any development that's in that category. That's really the primary concern, not on any particular plan or development or developer. And lastly, I think that your point about the traffic, we have thought of. I think it's an excellent point to bring up and recommendation to be studied. We've given it some thought, and we're hopeful that we can demonstrate that it wouldn't be something that would impact it to any degree that would warrant that level of concern.
I think I'm not going to disagree with you about the fear. I think there is a certain amount of fear out there, and there are studies, to be honest with you, that show that there's like 3 decimal points out about how many kids come in if it's a 2-bedroom unit. But if it's a 2-bedroom or and a den or a 3-bedroom, then the number jumps significantly. And given the fact that we have a very good, well-respected school system, we probably should assume a worst-case scenario. Now, if you, I don't know how many, I don't really remember how many bedrooms you had in the units on the project that's designed right now, and I'm assuming they must be 1 or 2. I don't remember any 3. But maybe there was 2 in a den. But I guess the real question is if you're having a different type of person moving into these things, what size units are you talking about?
Well, to be clear, we do have 2 in a den, at least, and we can certainly all review what the specific plans
kind of what I
were
remember.
approved.
Yeah.
But without question, we would have that. And seniors, 55 and older would want that.
I agree.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's for guests, for grandkids, or as a study, or a home office or something like that.
Or a nurse.
Fair enough.
I mean, someone like Alan's going to be looking for him.
Hopefully at 55,
Good-looking.
not the
Jeez,
case.
jeez.
Good-looking nurse.
I think with our school system, you will see a lot of families wanting to live there.
Yeah.
I've been recently looking at a lot of different condos, in Trumbull in particular, and I cannot believe how many young families are there, and their schools aren't as good as ours. They're actually decent. I think you will. I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think multi-generational is a great thing for our town. It's vibrant. It brings young and old people together. So I'm in favor of that, but I do think they will want to go to our schools because they are great. And I think a lot of young people don't want the whole maintenance of the property. They like to live in, wanting to downsize themselves. People don't want quite as big homes anymore. They like other things to be taken care of, and I think families would be interested.
When you did your study on determining that this project was a good project, Fieldstone wasn't on the board yet, was it?
Not to my knowledge.
I don't think so.
No, it wasn't.
So I'm kind of curious about. I mean, you are starting from square one, unfortunately, but I'm kind of curious about how much absorption could be taken in by all these projects. I mean, Fieldstone, by the way, a huge number of those people, I don't want to go so far as to give an exact percentage, but a large number are not even from local areas. A lot of them are coming up from Fairfield County. So it's not like people are moving from here to there or Orange to there, although that's happening as well. But there's a large number of people. Yeah, I know. So there's a large number of people that have actually just come up from Fairfield County. So, but I mean, obviously it's a completely different study than what you did initially. So.
What is your phasing plan? Do you know?
No, really don't.
Actually, I just quickly, because I'll forget again, going back to the idea of maybe a percentage of this should be 55 and over, I will tell you that will pretty much be dictated by the units. It's you can't say it, but you can, if you have a unit there where the master bedrooms, as you were talking about, the master bedroom's on the ground floor, then it's possible that someone who's 55 and over will move into there, as opposed to somebody that may not need to if it's a one bedroom. So it'll kind of level itself out that way. So I think the if you want to put a controlling factor on it, it'll be when they come back and say we want 100 4-bedroom units. You'll know that's a problem.
So you know if it's a townhome, you have the bedrooms on the second floor.
Right.
But
Right.
in terms of the, you're talking about smaller lot sizes to facilitate financing.
Smaller. I mean the project or the
No.
Parcel size.
The parcels, if I understand it correctly,
That's what I understand.
because that's one of the things you're
Yeah.
asking for. You're talking about dividing it up and being able to finance call it phases, for a better term. First phase, second phase, so on and so forth. Is this just financing, or would this also be that you would contemplate that each one would be a different corporate ownership, or different LLC, or how would it work that you're envisioning this? Or haven't you gotten that far?
It was hard for me to hear the conclusion to your
Oh.
question, but really all it is so that, let's say you took on the north side, if there was, I don't know, maybe 10 different buildings, maybe create 2 lots out of those 10 different buildings, and we would draft a regulation. In fact, it's been done in other places that would simply say you can submit a subdivision application, and provided that each of those parcels complies with the overall approved plan, then the commission can approve that subdivision. And yes, so there would be, Bank A may have a mortgage on parcel A, and Bank B would have a mortgage on parcel B. It's just, but, as you might suspect, the requirements of lenders in terms of scrutinizing every detail, including zoning, has really reached a level of that's, I've never seen before.
And if I may add, just particularly on any restricted community, age or otherwise, because the depth is not known. So the more restrictions that are put upon the housing approval or the development, the more difficult it is to finance. But again, against a backdrop that zoning in no way, shape, or form is compromised.
So could we look at that 700 square foot size just in one different way? I presume that we're not presumptively adding kids to the school system at 700 square feet. Would that be a fair assumption?
I think
We think so.
Yes.
We
Yes.
think
Well, certainly nothing they can guarantee.
They can't guarantee it,
Well,
exactly.
these are talking points. And I
Yes.
think, at the end of the day, as you put together a proposal, I think, you're starting at the point where you've looked at the demographics. You've indicated that we've determined, through our studies, that the 20 to 45-year-old population is not enhanced in this community. We've talked before about enhancing younger folks in the community, and that we needed a way to get them involved. A lot of the homes in the community are not inexpensive, so that those folks are not going to be part of this particular community unless and until they're ingratiated at a sensible level. So this may be one of the ways, the entry level. And if you can think about that dynamic over the course of time, then these people can become, full-fledged, responsible adults with families who end up purchasing homes as move-ups, et cetera. So, I think that this may well fit much better than just this old idea of the 55 and over. And I tend to agree that it probably ought to be 65 and over based upon life expectancy, but that's never been looked at seriously. But I think you have a unique opportunity with the size and the proposed density and some of these suggestions you made to put together a wonderfully concrete and sensible proposal that we can chomp on.
Thank you. That would be our goal. You hit upon something very interesting, though, and that has to do with the existing housing stock. Woodbridge is no different than other communities in the sense that the traditional single-family stock of home was devalued during the last cycle that we've.
35%.
It's dramatic, but equally important, it takes a social cost to people's expectations and mobility, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the themes that is being experienced in other communities, and I'm not suggesting that Woodbridge should follow any other community, this is a wonderful community with wonderful attributes, but there is a consistent theme, and that is that there are younger people coming into many communities, and when they get here, they're desired by the communities in many cases to stay and grow into taking the housing stock that's being relinquished by the older generations. And if they're not here to take it and they're not invited, it's proving a real problem, not just in the overall base, but in the overall housing values. It's really interesting how even during the times now that there seem to be real glimmers of, unemployment is still not a great topic of conversation, growth and things like that, but there are still homes that are wonderful homes, but the absorption and the values are not there because this demographic is certainly at the moment choosing a more exciting lifestyle in urban environments, but they're also at the same time, and that goes across the board, I think we all know, we're all kind of excited by urban life, but at the same time, they're not being invited. And I choose to believe most of the business that I do is in suburban communities, and I choose to believe that there will be enough people like me who choose this kind of suburban lifestyle, whether it's to raise kids or not, in that kind of housing stock, even though everyone seems to be flocking to an urban environment. I don't think that continues. I'm a little bit of a contrarian in thinking that may change sooner rather than later.
I think you're absolutely right. And you should have come to our POCD meetings, and you could have. We wouldn't have gotten a horse.
Well, what
You
could
said
be
the
good
same
about
thing.
this, the village community, is that you're close enough to New Haven, and it has an urban feel to it, that you can get the best of both possible worlds out of it.
Trillion
Hopefully.
extensions down the street,
Yeah,
literally speaking.
Yeah.
Southern is how far away? Almost a stone's throw. You got a good arm.
Gotta have a really good arm.
Be on your driver.
Well, the other thing that's not weight, you're absolutely right, all those things are right, and that's actually one of the problems in Woodbridge is we don't have a place for younger people to live. But the other problem is it's not just, it's people affording it. People coming out of school now owe way more money than people used to owe when they came out of school. And so people aren't buying their starter home when they're in their 20s.
It's all true.
over the board, but I do think that the ability of people to be proximate to jobs, and if you're looking at New Haven, et cetera, that's where they need to be. And if these are well-paying jobs in the pharmaceutical industry, as you indicated, you don't need to think long and hard on this. Okay, so I think the iron is getting very hot, and I'm sure this commission would like to be of some assistance to see that properly portrayed in terms of the project.
All right.
That's exciting. If you were at the POCD, I'm telling you, this would have gone over wonderfully well, don't you think?
I think he's ahead of you.
If I may, if you have a suggestion as to what our next step is, obviously, clearly like a lot of what took place tonight. I mean, frankly, this is the best conversation we've had since 2008, I think. I mean, should we come back to you on this sort of informal basis and give you some of our thoughts?
Okay, so
In terms of-
I only want to touch on the last conversation for 2 seconds. I thought we were pretty encouraging at that conversation, but I know you guys went away, said we weren't encouraging. So I'm sorry that there was no meeting of the minds. The toll project wasn't great for Woodbridge because suddenly they're offering us buildings that were 4 stories tall, like along the highway, and that isn't Woodbridge. And so I think we were probably pretty discouraging about that. But I think that you can, unless anybody feel free to correct me if I'm misstating that, but I think that the consensus seems to be that people are in favor or certainly up to strongly considering. I don't think anybody feels very strong that this has to stay at a 55 and over project. I also haven't heard anybody be adamant that, which I will say, didn't understand why it was part of the original approval, but where you were required, if you start the project, you had to finish the project. I didn't actually buy it then, and I don't hear anybody here saying that again. So I think that you're in a pretty good spot, and my suggestion would be to, start your design and come back with some schematics. And I think you're gonna have to work through it. I mean, I think your schematics may end up coming back a little different than what you just said, because those things actually work out as you're working on them. But
I think that the commission's in favor of what you're suggesting.
I think that parcel cries for development, and I think this commission will be very receptive to reasonable plans, and I, for one, am very much in favor of the mixed age use for that parcel.
I mean, it goes along with what our POCD says. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to, that's why we were changing it to have living units over retail in that area down there, not necessarily your piece of property, obviously, but to encourage, because not everybody does want to live in New Haven, but yet you can be living there and take the bus. Yeah. So
I think we'll need the specific changes that you would wish to see made in the zoning regulation.
Understood.
Obviously.
but you need to see a design before.
Does one come before the other? But at the end of the day, specific, that may drive certain the design, obviously. But I think, I don't know whether it's design or maybe it's easier for you to come up with the specific zoning changes you'd like to see made first. I don't know how far you are on the design phase.
I would encourage doing either simultaneously or the design first. I would be hesitant about signing off on a set of regulations.
I wouldn't sign off.
Everybody has an interpretation of what a zoning.
I would not sign off necessarily, but they got to get it in.
As you may have heard, we're always reluctant.
It's always going to be done simultaneously, at the same time in terms of both the approval of the process and the zoning change. It's going to be done simultaneously.
We'd probably be having a little reluctance if it was going to be applicable to all like-size areas in town. So I think, whatever is desirable should be site-specific, as we discussed in the earlier proposal, because we don't want to sort of generalize unless we need to. Things that are going on. Obviously, doing the village districts is unique in and of itself, but I just think you want to be cautious as to that.
We will, and just to answer the question as to, what level of design have we done, we've done nothing beyond the full design that we originally did, because we didn't want to be presumptuous that, and I echo what John has said, we view this to be a most productive meeting. We understand your thoughts, we respect your thoughts, and I think, I'm not sure exactly what the formal steps are, but informally, I think we know that, generally speaking, we need to go back and refine what you have approved in the past in a non-shocking way, so that, you know, the architectures and other influences are consistent, and I guess work some, modifications to the regulations to show how they would work with such a design, and make a presentation that you can get your arms around a little bit. But we don't have any kind of further design at the moment, or we'd bring it with us. We just don't.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Well, I don't think it has to be a formal design development, but I do think some type of indication of the views and the size and whatever that would be generally proposed, and would be useful to this commission.
Thank you.
As well
Thank
as,
you very much.
Yeah, as well as how you would envision phasing this. Because you said you talked, because I don't know, if I remember at the beginning you said you were talking about starting potentially the south side first, or was it the north side? I'm
Well,
sorry.
without, again, I was asked the question, how would we go, do we have a plan that way? And we don't. But I can tell you, that this kind of dialogue opens up the possibilities. It takes a lot of concern out of phasing. You still need to have a plan of phasing from a construction point of view at the minimum, and from a marketing point of view at the maximum. But when these restrictions are lifted in ways that they're embraced, then you can feel a little more emboldened to take greater risks. And I say that not just on behalf of us as an owner or developer, but on behalf of lending institutions. They feel less constrained and more bullish. So this facilitates it very much.
I think that, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think the commission and the town are way more well-versed on this type of a project and density than they were in '05. And just from the conversations, just from the way our our new POCD is now, I mean, and people have had a lot to say. We've had a lot of charrettes with a lot of public input, so people know.
I think with the younger population that might be going in here, you might have to reconsider some design of the land. Possibly, I mean, I've seen, not that you want to have a big playground, but if you're going to have young people, they want different things than older people. You may have already thought about that. So do a little research on what the younger people, if they're going to be coming here now, what they might be interested in.
It's a very good, very important point. We're going through that exact analysis on what has been called an obsolete suburban office park, and trying to create a renewed Google-esque, very active and interesting environment and sort of rebirthing of suburban office space. It's very interesting, but yes, I agree.
And the other component piece that I've seen in a variety of communities over quite a lot of years, and I think it's more poignant now when you talk about the banks and the difficulty in terms of getting financing, is right within that particular area, how many banking institutions do you have? And, they might be intrigued by a consortium approach in which there could be some percentage lending based upon the project. So I'm not telling you how to finance it, but I'm just suggesting that I think there's even creativity amongst the banks when it looks like it's going to enhance their bottom line. And if you get people in there who are going to use those services, and it's going to potentially help them, they'll be probably more amenable. So, and just some thoughts, and I've gone through that in other rehab issues professionally. So.
Mr. Chairman, would you recommend that a second informal meeting where some additional information could be discussed and shared among the parties?
I encourage as many meetings as you want to come to.
Thank you.
And if you, absolutely, I would
Visuals
definitely
are
spend
on
time
top.
coming and talking to us before you put your application in. If that works for you, I mean, that just pushes it out. But I will tell you, I know for a fact, I was one of the people that voted for this, but I know that it was in this commission for at least 3 or 4 years before it even came to a vote. So we'll try not to do that again. Not even close, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a very comfortable setting, and I think we know what to do and to come back, and thanks for the invitation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Is there anything to talk about from SCROG?
No, nothing.
Okay, no discussion on marijuana regulations, I guess. And, regulation revisions. Okay, no correspondence. We have approval of minutes.
I don't even remember seeing-
Did we get it?
I didn't remember seeing them.
I don't
They
think
were
we got
there.
them.
I think they were there because I read.
Got it.
Did you? I didn't remember seeing them.
Yeah, I didn't see any either.
They were behind your. They were behind this.
This is
Oh,
the-
oh,
I pulled all that stuff. Maybe.
I don't think we approved them the last time, because
Yeah, we did.
ready the last
They,
time.
exactly.
That's why you have them in the order. And I think I was at both of them, so I moved because I've already read them. Can't do it just like that. I'll move the April, what is it, March 23rd?
Second,
March 23rd.
March 23rd.
Yeah, so move that. Approval.
Alan's seconding it. Alan's first. Yeah.
First and
Alan and
second.
Alan. Any questions? Any changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll
Opposed?
abstain.
One abstention. Okay, is there a motion for the minutes from April 6th?
So moved. It's a nice short meeting, we missed.
Right.
No.
Shortest one ever.
Seconds.
I'm going to abstain, obviously. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so one abstain. You obviously don't get paid as much as I do. You would have stayed.
No,
longer.
no, 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 it was the basketball game was.
I know. I know I was
We had a
bad.
hell of a meeting.
I know I was
You
bad.
really did. It was concise and precise.
It's the best meeting ever.
Watch it.
Oh,
All right,
do we need a motion to adjourn?
if you'd like.
I don't.
That's your official motion.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.